Yes, we are joined by Director of the Rights and Risk Analysis Group, Suhas Chakma, on this broadcast. He's also the member of the National Human Rights Commission, one of the core members of the National Human Rights Commission, the report which has raised these red flags on the composition and the intent of the commission. Thank you very much, sir, for joining, and also glad to welcome Ambassador Veena Sikri, former envoy to Bangladesh. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm going to quickly start with Suhas. What are the basis of these key findings of your report? It, in a big way rather, exposes the exclusionist agenda or the approach of Mohammed Yunus's interim government.
Well, I mean, the findings are based on actual incidents which have taken place.
Okay.
And these are recognized by the government of Bangladesh. And these are reports which are published by the local organizations. We are also verified by us. So that's, I think, as far as the findings on human rights violations which took place from 19th September to 1st October are concerned. The second issue is, of course, notification on the constitution of this reform commission that has been notified, and there are no Hindu minorities or the hill tribes representative. And I think at certain stage in the country, people expected Yunus to be different from the rest because he is not a politician. And his aim is to conduct election, establish peace. But then even if he undertakes reform, as a Nobel laureate, he is actually supposed to take everybody on board. And obviously, he is not following the agenda of, I would say, even the right-wing BNP. Forget about the Army League. He is actually following the agenda of the Jamaat-e-Islami and the more hardline groups. So I think it's a very dangerous trend. I think international community is under the impression that the Nobel laureate is liberal, he is inclusive, he is not liberal, he is illiberal, and he is excluding the most vulnerable people, not only the hill tribes and the religious minorities, even the women. I mean, if you include only one woman out of 9 members, it's absolutely uncalled for, and that's not something I think Yunus can sell and convince anybody in the world.
Well, inclusive and peace-loving and liberal is that's something which is not visible as the findings of these reports, Ambassador Sikri, is concerned. By the way, we would like to tell our viewers Ambassador Sikri was also present at the briefing of the diplomats that took place in Delhi on the conflicts in Bangladesh and Myanmar. Ma'am, your observations. It actually raises, larger questions on the way the interim government proposes to further be, well, they're talking about the inclusive democracy, but if one has to believe the findings of the report, it is anything but inclusive. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think there are two very distinct aspects of the issues raised in the report that Mr. Chakma has just spoken about. First is the troubles being faced by the minorities, the violence, the killings, the lootings, destruction of property, a denial of economic livelihood, forced to resign from jobs. All this has been happening to the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Sikhs from the 5th of August onwards, and has been taken up at a very strong level by the government of India, including with the chief advisor of the interim government, Professor Mohammed Yunus, including even with Professor Joe Biden, and including with many other people. And despite all the assurances, the difficulties are continuing. We've seen that in Khagrachari, the violence which took place, the people there said that the army was with the people who were committing the violence. That was one thing they said. Then on the Hindu community, the Durga Puja festival is going on right now. But there have been attacks on Durga Puja pandals, and there have been difficulties in them going into the celebration of the Durga Puja. Despite the fact that the Jamaat-e-Islami says that we are protecting your Durga Puja pandals, we have seen the report today, as you have just reported, that from one of the most important temples of one of the Shakti Peeths.
Exactly.
In Yeshweshwari temple in Satkira, the very precious mukut, the crown of the goddess Durga, goddess Kali, that was placed by Prime Minister Modi in March of 2021. That crown has disappeared. It has been stolen, and the Indian embassy has protested against it. So this is going on in the Durga Puja celebrations and despite all the assurances.
Ma'am, if you look at these CCTV footage, I mean, this man who has been, who can be clearly, can we play those visuals again, please, of the theft? You know, you can clearly identify this person in the CCTV footage, and he walks in very normally, picks up the crown, walks out, and I mean, this I think is reflective of the lawlessness that prevails in the country. Is that so simple? He walks in and walks out with the crown.
It is very much that, and I think the second aspect, so this is one aspect. The second aspect is what has been raised about the constitutional reform proposal. Now that again is very surprising because two things have happened here. One is that the government itself is saying, the interim government, that we must have reforms before elections. Normally an interim government,
yes,
such as was previously in the Bangladesh constitution, would be there just for 90 days and would organize elections in those times. And it's the elected body who would conduct whatever reforms that they felt were necessary.
That was my next question going to be. Suhas ji, what is this talk about reforms without elections? I mean, is interim government constitutionally empowered enough to talk about these reforms, which, by the way, as per your report, are very lopsided? I mean, if you have put in a 9-member committee, it has to have a representation from all stakeholders, at least.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have to include all different sections of the society, and they are not including them. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is the current government does know on what legal footing it is operating on, because the constitution of Bangladesh, which is operating at this point of time, is not or does not allow an interim government. That's one part. The second part is the constitution itself has not been suspended. So it means the constitution is in operation. And if the constitution is in operation, at the end of the day, you have to be empowered by the constitution to do something. So in a way, it indicates absolute lawlessness in the country. And Muhammad Yunus, without being elected, is actually conducting all activities except governance. So that is in a way to ensure that he stays in power beyond 3 months or beyond 6 months, because once you undertake reform process, it's not going to be completed in 3 months' time. Then more unfortunate parties, then you hold elections.
Okay.
And there will be a new government. The election, you know, the new government which comes to power might say, you know, this is rubbish, we just throw it out. So why have you spent so much time on this? Because a new government elected by the party, your people, has no obligation whatsoever to accept the dictate of Muhammad Yunus. So we have to understand this whole exercise of reform, you know, the 6 reforms which he is talking or he has undertaken, these are means to stay in power and buy enough time so that he can form a political party of his own and ensure that nobody can enjoy the power and he stays in power, you know, till the next election or whenever he wants to do.
Okay, if that is the game plan, allegedly, Ambassador Sikri, but this is a larger question about the credibility, and Mr. Suhas's think tank's report has clearly sought the intervention of the UNHRC.
Absolutely, because, you know, in addition to the fact that the interim government has set up a constitutional reform committee, which is not at all inclusive, which is headed by a professor who is actually based in the United States. It also has journalists on it, but I do not see any constitutional experts on it. In addition to that, I must tell you that one of the parties, the Jamaat-e-Islami, who actually is the real power behind the throne right now, and who seems to be wielding enormous power throughout Bangladesh, and in terms of it is their people who are getting all the appointments, it's their people who are getting all the university jobs and so on. This Jamaat-e-Islami, their Amir made an announcement just 2 days ago, which they came up with their own state reform proposal, where they proposed a constitution of their own, and in that press conference, the Amir says that the 1972 constitution of Bangladesh was made in India. Like he completely denigrating it if we don't accept that constitution.
Okay.
Now we must say that constitution was made by the best constitutional expert of Bangladesh.
Okay.
Kamal Hussain, Barrister Amir Islam and others. So now he is given his own constitution proposal which has no authority.
Right, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, one last question. Yes, I'm sorry we're really running short of time, but Suhas ji, so the larger question is this, are we looking at a larger clout of Islamists who are calling the shot behind Yunus? And if that is the case, it is a matter of serious concern, because Jamaat at the end of the day cannot really have a free walk like this. Then why are they talking about democracy?
Well, I think, yesterday one of the panelists in another discussion with Madam Sikri was saying Jamaat is actually softer version. He is being advised by organizations which are Islamist, which was, I forgot the name. It was banned by the government of India yesterday. So I think Bangladesh is heading towards not Islamist, but hardline Islamist state. And that's the fear. And that's why I think the government of Bangladesh, the Yunus government, interim government, is not allowing Tariq Jia to return to Bangladesh, because
mainstream politics.
Even BNP is seen as a liberal party by Yunus and his advisors.
All right, I think it's a larger question about the credibility and the authenticity or the intentions of the so-called interim government in place, because they are at the end of the day talking about reforms and inclusive democracy. If one has to go by the findings of your report, that's a big question. There's a big question on these claims made by the interim government. Meanwhile, thank you very much, Ambassador Sikri. Such a pleasure as always. And thank you, Mr. Suhas Chakma, director of the think tank which has published this report. Thank you, both of you.